You walk into an old, unused cabin, grab a broom, and start cleaning. Sweeping the floor disturbs a thick layer of dust, sending thousands of microscopic particles drifting into the air. That dust contains dried urine, feces, and saliva left behind by local rodents, primarily deer mice. When those particles become aerosolized, you breathe them directly into your lungs. For up to 8 weeks, you feel completely normal, while the virus quietly establishes itself deep within your tissue. You never saw a mouse. You never touched an animal, but simply breathing the air inside a quiet room has triggered an invisible sequence that requires no physical contact to spring. When the illness finally surfaces, it masks itself perfectly. You develop a fever, muscle aches, and fatigue. It feels exactly like a standard mild case of the flu. Then, the timeline abruptly compresses. In a rapid 48-hour window, breathing becomes severely labored. The respiratory system collapses, forcing patients straight into intensive care as they develop Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome, or HPS. For New World strains of hantavirus, there is currently no cure and no FDA-approved vaccine. Even with medical intervention, the fatality rate stays anchored near 50. Rather than destroying the host, it utilizes the cell's machinery to pump out dozens of new viral clones. Since the host cell remains intact, no immediate cellular alarms ring. The virus uses the body's own circulatory infrastructure to secretly multiply in the shadows. Eventually, the viral load becomes too massive to hide. The immune system finally recognizes a systemic infection spreading across the vascular network, and it panics. It responds to the cytokine storm. Armies of T cells and macrophages flood the lung tissue, releasing aggressive chemical signals. But the virus hides inside the vessel walls. As immune cells bombard this lining, the chemical bonds holding the cells together break apart, spilling blood plasma. That plasma has nowhere to go but directly into the alveolar air sacs. The patient begins drowning from the inside out in their own fluids. At this critical stage, medical intervention is purely supportive. ECMO machines oxygenate blood outside the body, keeping the patient alive until the immune system calms. The virus itself never destroyed a single cell. The fatal blow comes entirely from the host's own immune system, destroying the body's integrity in a desperate attempt to save it. While the mechanism of death is microscopic, the triggers for these outbreaks are ecological. Heavy rainfall, driven by shifting climate patterns, sets the stage. Ecologists refer to this as a trophic cascade. Severe El Niño rainstorms pour massive amounts of water over arid landscapes, resulting in a sudden, explosive surplus of vegetation and seeds. As rodent numbers surge in response to the food surplus, the volume of contaminated waste increases, leading to a direct rise in human encounters and spillover events. These outbreaks follow a predictable biological chain reaction. A change in the weather determines how many people will inhale a lethal pathogen months later. For decades, it was assumed this was an isolated rural threat. Then, in May 2026, an outbreak struck the MV Hondius cruise ship off the coast of Argentina. The strain responsible was the South American Andes virus, and it demonstrated a terrifying capability: transmission directly from human to human. The discovery of infections between passengers, without any rodent contact, demonstrated that this specific strain had bypassed the traditional requirement for environmental exposure. This shift prompted the World Health Organization to classify hantavirus as a potential disease X, a pathogen possessing the raw biological tools for a pandemic. We are dealing with a pathogen that scales with the climate and waits for specific environmental triggers to emerge from its natural reservoirs. The most lethal public health threats rarely announce themselves. Sometimes they are microscopic traps, waiting silently in the shadows, sprung by a single, unknowing breath.